The Soviet soldier stands tall, his eyes are fixed on the horizon. Before him the enemy advances, but he does not waver. This is the image of unwavering discipline that defined the Red Army, a force that would ultimately turn the tide of the war. From the frozen steppes to Stalingrad, they faced unimaginable hardships. Their iron will became the backbone of the Soviet war effort, and in the end, it would be this iron discipline that would lead them to victory. The making of a Soviet soldier was no easy task. In training camps across the vast expanse of the Soviet Union, young men and women were molded into warriors. The process was grueling. Physical fitness was paramount. Soviet soldiers were pushed to their limits and beyond. They ran for miles in full gear. They crawled through mud under live fire. They learned to survive in the harshest conditions nature could throw at them. But physical toughness was only part of the equation. Mental discipline was equally important. Soldiers were indoctrinated with a sense of duty and loyalty to the state. Political education played a crucial role in this process. Commissars ensured that every soldier understood what they were fighting for. This ideological training gave the Soviet soldier a reason to fight, a cause to believe in even in the darkest hours. Discipline was enforced with an iron fist. This unyielding discipline would prove crucial in the battles to come. If there was one battle that epitomized the discipline of the Soviet soldier, it was Stalingrad. This city on the Volga became the anvil upon which the Nazi war machine would be broken. For months, Soviet defenders held out against overwhelming odds. They fought for every street, every building, every room. Their discipline never wavered, even as the city crumbled around them. The Germans, confident in their superiority, expected a quick victory. But they underestimated the resolve of the Soviet defender. Stalin's order was clear, not a step back, and the soldiers took this to heart. They turned every ruin into a fortress. Every cellar became a bunker. The fighting was brutal, often hand-to-hand, but the Soviets refused to yield. As winter set in, conditions became even more desperate. Food was scarce, ammunition was running low, but still, the Soviet soldiers held on. Their discipline allowed them to endure hardships that would have broken lesser men. The turning point came in November with Operation Uranus, a massive Soviet counter-offensive. By February 1943, it was over. Stalingrad had held. The tide of war had turned. The discipline of Soviet soldiers was not limited to the battlefields. It extended to every aspect of their lives during the war. In the face of unimaginable hardships, they remained steadfast. Consider the siege of Leningrad. For 872 days, the city was cut off from the rest of the Soviet Union. Food was scarce, the winters were brutal. Yet the people of Leningrad, many of them soldiers, refused to surrender. They ate wallpaper paste and boiled leather belts for sustenance. They worked in factories even as bombs fell around them. Their discipline and determination kept the city alive. On the Eastern Front, Soviet soldiers faced challenges that seem almost unimaginable today. They marched for days without rest. They fought in temperatures that dropped to 40 degrees below zero. Yet, they persevered. The early years of the war were marked by retreat for the Soviet Union. The German blitzkrieg seemed unstoppable. Yet even in these dark times, the discipline of Soviet soldiers shone through. They fought delaying actions, buying time for factories to be moved east. They scorched the earth, denying the enemy resources. Every step back was contested, every mile made costly for the invaders. This disciplined retreat allowed the Soviets to regroup and reorganize. Behind the lines, new armies were being formed. Factories relocated beyond the Ural Mountains began to churn out tanks and planes at an incredible rate. The Soviet war machine was gathering strength, preparing for the moment to strike back. The turning point came at Moscow in December 1941. Fresh Siberian divisions, battle-hardened and winter-equipped, arrived to bolster the defense. On December 5th, the Soviets launched a massive counteroffensive. The Germans, exhausted and ill-prepared for the Russian winter, were driven back. From this point on, the initiative began to shift. The annals of Soviet military history are filled with tales of individual heroism. These stories, while celebrating personal bravery, also highlight the importance of discipline. For it was often in strictly following orders, in adhering to their training, that Soviet soldiers performed their most heroic deeds. Take, for example, the story of Zoya Kosmodemyanskaya. A young partisan, she was captured by the Germans while on a sabotage mission. Despite brutal torture, she refused to reveal any information. Her last words, shouted defiantly at her executioners, became a rallying cry for Soviet resistance. Zoya's unwavering discipline in the face of certain death inspired countless others to fight on. Or consider the feat of Alexander Matrosov. During a battle in 1943, his unit was pinned down by German machine gun fire. Without hesitation, Matrosov threw himself on the enemy embrasure, using his body to block the gunfire. His sacrifice allowed his comrades to advance and take the position. The victory of the Soviet Union in World War II came at a staggering cost. Millions of Soviet citizens, both military and civilian, lost their lives. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. The scars of the war would take generations to heal. Yet through it all, the discipline of the Soviet soldier never faltered. They paid the price willingly, understanding the magnitude of what was at stake. The siege of Leningrad alone claimed over 1 million lives. For 872 days, the city's inhabitants endured unimaginable hardships. Food was so scarce that people resorted to eating wallpaper paste and boiled leather. Yet the city held out. The discipline of its defenders, many of them ordinary citizens turned soldiers, kept the German and Finnish forces at bay. Their sacrifice ensured that Leningrad would remain free. On the battlefield, Soviet soldiers often faced overwhelming odds. The discipline of Soviet soldiers left an indelible mark on history. It was a key factor in turning the tide of World War II. Without the unyielding resolve of these men and women, the outcome of the conflict might have been very different. Their legacy continues to influence military thinking to this day. The Soviet approach to discipline was not without its critics. Some argue that it was too harsh, too inflexible. The price paid in human lives was undeniably high. Yet it's hard to argue with the results. The Red Army, once on the brink of defeat, became the most powerful land force in Europe. It was discipline that allowed them to endure the early setbacks and ultimately emerge victorious. The lessons learned from the discipline of Soviet soldiers in World War II continue to resonate, reminding us of the strength that comes from unwavering resolve and shared purpose.